Ethan Ward had lived most of his life inside polished boardrooms and glass-walled offices that hovered above the city like watchtowers. People called him unstoppable, tireless, a man who didn't understand the meaning of slowing down. It had been true for years, until the morning his body gave out without warning. The day had begun like any other. Meetings stacked one after another. Employees stepping aside as he hurried through the hallway. Coffee cooling on his desk, untouched. Yet something felt off. His legs had been heavy. His breath uneven. He ignored it and pushed harder. By noon he collapsed just outside the elevators. His knees buckled and the world swung sideways. A jolt of pain shot through his legs as if someone had cut the strings inside them. He grabbed the wall, trembling. "I can't walk," he whispered, shocked at hearing his own voice break. People gasped. A few rushed toward him, but everyone froze when a quiet figure stepped out from behind the cleaning cart. It was Daniel Hale, the janitor who worked the early shifts. Most employees barely noticed him. A single dad with a shy smile and gentle nature, Daniel moved through the building with the steady rhythm of someone used to staying invisible. He crouched beside Ethan, steadying him with surprising confidence. "Don't try to stand. Just breathe," Daniel said, his tone slow and reassuring. Ethan felt dizzy. Embarrassed. Who collapses in front of their own employees like this? He tried again to push himself up, but Daniel placed a steady hand on his shoulder. "Stop. You're making it worse." A crowd hovered closer. Someone said they had called an ambulance. Ethan's chest tightened. He wasn't ready for sirens or flashing lights or headlines about a CEO who cracked under pressure. The fear clawed at him and his breath hitched. Daniel leaned close and whispered something so soft only Ethan could hear. "I know what this is. I've had the same thing happen." Ethan stared at him, stunned. Daniel continued quietly, "Your legs didn't fail. Your body is scared. You're carrying too much and you don't even realize it. Let me help you before they come." There was something in Daniel's voice that Ethan couldn't explain. A calm understanding that felt impossible from a man who barely spoke to anyone. Ethan nodded before he even understood why. Daniel helped him shift into a sitting position, supporting him as if he'd done it many times before. The pain eased enough for Ethan to breathe again. The trembling slowed. By the time the paramedics arrived, he looked less like a fallen leader and more like a man returning from somewhere dark. They recommended he go to the hospital. Ethan refused at first, but Daniel spoke up softly. "You'll regret it if you don't go." Something in those words settled him. He agreed. Hours later, after tests and questions and a long stretch of silence, the doctor gave a clear answer. Stress-induced paralysis. Temporary, but serious. A final warning from a body pushed too far. When Ethan was finally discharged, the evening air felt thick and cool as he stepped outside supported by a pair of crutches. He expected a car from his office, maybe an assistant. Instead, he found Daniel waiting for him at the curb. "You didn't have to come," Ethan said, surprised. Daniel shrugged in that quiet way of his. "I figured you shouldn't go home alone tonight." They drove through the city in Daniel's older car, the kind with worn seats but a warm, lived-in scent. For the first time in years, Ethan didn't feel like talking with authority or performing strength. He just listened as Daniel shared small pieces of his life. A daughter in elementary school. A late wife he still spoke of in the present tense. A time years ago when his body had reacted the same way Ethan's had, leaving him frozen in fear on a grocery store floor. "It came from pretending I was fine when I wasn't," Daniel said. "My doctor called it a silent collapse. The moment your body stops believing your mind." Ethan didn't speak for a long moment. No one had ever described him so accurately with a single sentence. When Daniel parked outside Ethan's building, he hesitated. "That thing you whispered earlier," Ethan said, leaning against the door. "How did you know?" Daniel looked at him with a steady gaze. "Because you were the same expression I used to. People see you as unbreakable. But you're still human. You're allowed to stop before you shatter. Ethan felt something shift inside him. A small crack in the armor he'd worn for years. Over the next few days, the office buzzed with rumors, but Ethan didn't return immediately. He needed time. Rest. Silence. And strangely, he found himself thinking about Daniel more than anyone else. The janitor who had held him upright when he fell. The man everyone overlooked. One evening, Ethan visited the building after hours. Daniel was mopping the marble floor, humming under his breath. His daughter sat nearby doing homework. When she saw Ethan, she offered a shy smile. "Dad says you're the man who forgot he had legs that day." Daniel almost dropped the mop. "Lena," he whispered, embarrassed. But Ethan laughed. A real, warm laugh he hadn't heard from himself in years. He sat with them for a while. They talked about small things. Simple things. Real things. By the time he stood to leave, a new thought had rooted itself quietly in his mind. The next morning, he arrived at the office and called a meeting. Not about profits. Not about new projects. But about mental health, work-life balance, and the cost of constant pressure. His employees stared at him like he'd turned into a different man. Maybe he had. When the meeting ended, Ethan walked straight to the facilities department. Daniel was repairing a loose hinge on a cabinet door. Ethan cleared his throat. "I owe you more than thanks," he said gently. "You reminded me what it means to be human. And I don't plan to forget." Daniel looked away as if hiding a shy smile. "You stood up again. That's your doing, not mine." But Ethan knew the truth. Sometimes the strongest hands are the ones no one notices. Sometimes the people who save you are the ones you've passed 100 times without seeing. And sometimes a whisper in a quiet hallway can change everything. That day, it had changed him.